So normally when you pick up a fancy pen like the 823 here, you also get an equally fancy bottle of ink. Here is one such bottle. This 70ml behemoth is a far departure from the normal Iroshizuku bottles that many of us probably associate with Pilot, but I like it. The footprint actually takes up about the same amount of desk space. It's just taller, deeper, and lacks the nib divot in the bottom. At least we get these filling instructions on the back though. One thing you may notice when looking at the bottom though is something to make up for that nib divot. Let's get this bottle open so we can take a closer look. And let's get these bubbles out of the way. What we have here is a plastic inner reservoir that allows you to get a full fill to the end of the bottle. You can buy an add-on like this to put in other bottles, but I like that this one actually comes with it. Now, speaking of filling, let's go ahead and fill the 823 that came with this ink. Or is it the other way around? Anyways, let's take a look at this basic blue. Which, one more side note, I like the way that this bottle looks in slow motion. So the first thing that stands out to me is the subtle red sheen that we see on the ink blot. And you can see here on Rhodia, with this blot, we're getting more mids and darks than anything else, which isn't bad, but this blot doesn't feel like a true representation of the ink. Whereas on Tomoe, we're definitely getting a more subdued look. Almost gone is the red sheen, and more of the mids are coming through. But this is still a darker blue, and it feels like it's middle of the road, but I don't really mean that in a bad way. Sometimes you just need a blue without all the extras. And even coming out of the pen, we start seeing the darker side of the blue. And we are getting some shading here, but to be honest, I think it's one of the nicer touches of this ink. And of course, this is also being done with a broader nib. Now, that was from the side. Looking at this ink from eye level, and with the light hitting it differently, the ink looks lighter. But that is both an illusion of how I have this lit, and as we get towards the end of the sample, it's also due to a mistake. Now here is the Pilot error, as it were. Those who own an 823 know full well that writing with the blind cap closed off will dry out the feed, which I completely forgot and completely did. Now that we've taken care of that, you can see that this ink is coming out completely on the darker side of blue. No doubt about that. Now, I wish I'd gotten a side angle of this so you could see how dark it could get with this setup, but here we are. And having learned my lesson on the Tomoe, let's see how this comes out on the Rhodia. I mean, you can already tell that this is pretty spot on with what we had on Tomoe once I remembered the blind cap. If anything, and this is purely aesthetic, I like how the blue goes against the color of the Rhodia paper versus that of the Tomoe River. And if I had to think about it, I think it's really the contrast that draws me in. If this ink was going down on the page any lighter, I probably wouldn't like it. But the contrast with this dark of a shade is actually spot on for me. Now let's see how the dry times ended up with the different papers that we're using here. And this is going to be a quick comparison. Going from the Rhodia onto the Tomoe, it's equal performance. We are completely dry by 20 seconds with broad, and 5 seconds with extra fine. So it's a really good performance overall from Pilot Blue. And as we move over to the water performance, we also get a good showing here. Giving it a second to soak and then drying it completely, we're left with quite a bit of the original color and no problem whatsoever recovering what you have written on the page. Honestly, I'd give this a 4 out of 5 easily. So let's try to put my thoughts together when it comes to this ink. And that is where this is going to get somewhat tough. It's not like I bought this huge bottle by itself. Instead, it came with a pen. And that, to me, already made it a good value. If I could find a place that had it in stock, I would probably find it a good value on that front as well. I mean, from what I saw, this is a $16 bottle for a ludicrous amount of ink. And for the performance we get, it's a good value both as an included ink and as a standalone. The inclusion of the internal inkwell system is also a nice touch, because 5 years from now, when I'm finally getting down to the bottom of this ink bottle, I'm going to need all the help I can get to get the ink into my pen. But overall, I'm pleased with this ink, and I'm glad that OSU ATS 13 kept this along with the 823 that he sold me. I mean, on the secondhand market, you don't always get the goodies that come with the pen, and this time I did, and a useful goodie it definitely is. But that's going to be it for this video. Ink up that subscribe button, become a patron for early releases and extras, follow the channel on Twitter and Instagram, and remember, don't drink the ink.